Dear participants, good morning, good afternoon. We are happy to welcome you to our traditional public lecture of the Institute of Public Policy and Administration of the of the University of Central Asia. Usually we held this kind of lectures in face-to-face format. Now we switch to online for obvious reasons. Let me repeat the same thing in Russian, and then I will continue in English. Уважаемые участники, добрый день. Большое спасибо, что вы присоединились к нашей лекции, которую мы обычно проводили в очном формате, но теперь по понятным причинам проводим онлайн. Значит, вся лекция будет происходить на английском языке. Дискуссию можно будет вести как на английском, так и на русском языке. Те, кто еще не имеет опыта пользования Zoom, обратите внимание, там внизу есть кнопочка, где земной шар изображен, написано Interpretation. Да, вот подсказка здесь написана, еще раз выведена на экран. Пожалуйста, выбирайте необходимый вам язык для перевода. Если вы комфортабельно себя чувствуете на обоих языках, выберите просто Off. A request to everybody, would you kindly mute your mics unless you are speaking, and I will invite everybody to speak. So without invitation, please have your mic muted. Thank you. Today we have a distinguished speaker presenting at our public lecture, Professor Kairat Manbayev. He works at the Satbayev University located in Almaty, Kazakhstan, and that's a very big university, former National Technical University. So Professor Manbayev has rich experience of teaching and research. He taught in such countries as United States, Brazil, and Kazakhstan. And he is a researcher in a broad field covering mathematics, statistics, economics, and finance. He published books and multiple articles, and he is really interesting source of information about economy of Kazakhstan and beyond. So today, Professor Manbayev is going to talk about the membership of Kazakhstan in the Eurasian Economic Union. To what extent it helps to diversify the economy of Kazakhstan. We all know that one of the important reasons for Kazakhstan to become member of this union was exactly to get rid of the full reliance on energy and mineral resources for the development of the economy. And we know that the union exists for more than 6 years already, and it would be interesting to explore what are the first effects we can observe. So let me explain the rules. So now we have a presentation of Professor Manbayev, and then after that we will have a discussion. For discussion, I will explain rules before we started, but please either raise your hand or write in the chat box that you would like to ask a question, or just type in the question if it is more comfortable for you, and then I will ask it for you. Whatever option is all available. You can ask questions both in English and in Russian. Okay, without further ado, Professor Manbayev, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Everybody has seen my face, so I'm going to stop the video, and I want to put that screen sharing on. Personally, I do not see my screen. How do I do it? I want to see what you see.
I think we see your screen, but it's not very helpful, right? So it's some technical noise.
Yeah, I wanted to see what you see. It's not the same. I just see that the panel at the top.
Well, meantime, if you just send the presentation to Baymat, he will share his screen. It will perhaps be the easiest.
Okay. It's like I'm a blind person here. I don't know what I am doing.
Well, that's not a big problem. Just please send it to Baymat.
I already did that. Okay, anyway.
Anyway, yes. Just
yeah.
he will share his screen and will follow your speech. So please proceed.
Yeah, okay. So in the beginning, I wanted to talk about history a little bit. Everybody knows how big the Soviet Union was, and everybody knows about the collapse of the Soviet Union, and starting from the collapse and even a little before that, big economic problems were experienced everywhere in the Soviet Union. First, because of the high inflation everywhere in the ruble zone, and then Kazakhstan, after that, about 1 year after that, Kazakhstan became independent, and it started to print its own money, and again there was high inflation. That was one reason of a bad situation in Kazakhstan. The second reason was that the links between producers, suppliers, all kinds of links, economic links, were disrupted after the collapse of the Soviet Union, and therefore the fall in the both agricultural and industrial production was very big. The figure that I saw in the 1990s was that the fall was around 30%, but recently I looked up those figures and it was slightly lower, 23% for Kazakhstan. Still, it was a very big figure, and it is comparable to what happened in the United States during the Great Depression of from Ulanbek to me. Is it? Turn on your video. I can do that, but I want to. Can you see at the same time my screen and myself? Ulanbek, did you want to see me?
Мы видим только вас.
Okay, anyway,
yes,
not a big problem if you see me. Well, that disrupt a big fall in production and agricultural production, industrial production was comparable to what happened in the United States during the Great Depression. And then on top of that, we had some other problems. I already mentioned the high inflation rate everywhere in the former Soviet Union, but in addition to that, the adepts of the so-called shock therapy, somehow they gained popularity in the former Soviet Union, and everywhere applied that shock therapy. The name itself comes, I believe, from the experience of Poland. In Poland, the shock therapy was successful. They were able to quickly switch from the command economy to the market economy. Of course, initially there was a big fall, but literally within 1 or 2 years, the effects of that shock therapy were positive, and the big difference between the situation of Kazakhstan and Poland was that Poland was close to Western Europe, and when they freed the economy, there was a lot of investment from other European countries, first of all, from Germany. I see the text. Somebody displayed the text, well, anybody. Anyway, and the situation in Kazakhstan and everywhere in the former Soviet Union was different, because since the country was so big, no Western country would be able to pour that much money into the country. And also the geographic distance played a role. It's much easier was for for Germany, for example, to invest in Poland than it would be, say, to invest in Kazakhstan. So all kinds of problems led to that big fall in the production. To compare, you can look up what the internet has about the respective public policies in China. China never, they actually started their transition to the market economy in 1979, if I'm not mistaken. And since that time, they never allowed for such a big fall. So the overall conclusion is that shock therapy is not a good policy. It's better to pursue gradual transition to the market economy. All that is already history, and there was some improvement in Kazakhstan in the second half of the 1990s, and that improvement mainly came about because of that investment into the oil and gas sector. The interest in the oil and gas sector of Kazakhstan was first appeared in 1992, and then the first large investments, especially by the US companies, started in 1996, but it took 2 or 3 years for those investments to spread in the economy. And by the time, by around 2000 or 2001, the overall effect was already significant in Kazakhstan. And we could say that actually it was so significant that that big fall initial that there was in Kazakhstan. After that big fall, around 2001, for the first time, Kazakhstan restored its level of GDP that it had in 1991. So it took about 10 years to restore the GDP level. And fortunately for me, actually I studied in the United States first, then I worked for some time in Brazil. And fortunately for me, by the time when I decided to come back to Kazakhstan, the situation improved a lot. So, and then what happened? Then historically on the worldwide scale, there was that big financial crisis in 2008. Between 2001 and 2008, Kazakhstan was doing fine, but that financial crisis affected almost every country in the world, and it affected Kazakhstan in a very special way. Financially, if you talk about those pyramid effects that prevailed everywhere in the world, by themselves, they did not affect so much Kazakhstan. But what happened was that in around 2006, 2007, in a couple of years preceding that big fall, the financial crisis of 2008, Kazakhstani banks went out to the international banks, to the international markets, and obtained a lot of dollar-denominated loans. And they started to use that dollar amounts in order to provide tenge loans inside the country, okay? And so when the financial crisis started, the interest rates on the international markets immediately jumped up, and the Kazakhstani banks, faced with the necessity to pay those loans at the higher interest rate. And since the internal production was not very good, and what happened was that they didn't have enough money to repay all those international loans, and the banking system in Kazakhstan, because of that, had a big problem. And then the government started to help banks in Kazakhstan. The amounts of both dollar and tenge amounts that were given to Kazakhstani banks were very large at that time. And unfortunately, nobody in the government has the courage to finish that problem like quickly. they actually extended. They tried to help the banks little by little, and that problem that initially started in 2008, it extended up to more or less 2016 for about 8 years. And why was that? It's because Kazakhstani banks kept on their balance sheets many non-performing loans. Non-performing loans are just loans that are not repaid. Neither the interest nor the principal are not repaid. So it's basically dead loans, and it would be better for Kazakhstani banks to get rid of them, just write them off, and they didn't do that. Okay, so if you look at what happened in the in the world on the international market, you don't see any big problems after that 2008 crisis. Okay, but here in Kazakhstan, the problem continued until 2016. And even today, I saw figures like that about 7 or 8% of all loans are non-performing. And this is a huge figure by international standards. So if you, I have here, let me see. As I am talking, I can show you some illustration. You have the file, okay? So here's the illustration for my first statement about the fall of GDP.
Excuse me, we don't see anything.
Yeah, just a second, I am going to do that. So first of all, here, do you see this now?
Not yet.
No? But in general, my screen, do you see
No,
the
we
screen?
don't see you. No, we don't see your screen.
No, that's too bad. I already shared. Maybe I need to, oh, yeah. Somehow it was disconnected. Maybe it was my video. Should I stop my video and start
No,
sharing?
it should not be an issue.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, it's coming now.
How about now?
Yeah, now we see it.
Yeah, so see, I commented about the beginning. Here's the beginning. You cannot see it, but actually that the fall in the from 1990 to about 2005, there was a big fall, initial fall of 23% in GDP. And then the next period from 1995 to 2000, it was the time when the situation was improving because of that foreign direct investment, mainly in the oil and gas sector. And the time between 2000 and 2008 until the international crisis, it was a very good time, okay? You can see here that the rate of growth of GDP was very high. In fact, it was one of the best in the world at that time. And then there was, in 2008, there was initial fall here. You see that? This was natural because the international crisis was very strong. And then it started to grow, but actually it was growing on the background of those non-performing loans. The banks should have got rid of them, but they did not do that, and basically it's the fault of the government that allowed those non-performing loans to stay on the balance sheets of the banks. And finally, this is the best time from 2013 to 2016. During those 3 years, there were no big problems on the international level. There was in 2013, we can relate this to the sanctions imposed on Russia after that Crimea grab, and this is when the problems started. But for us, for Kazakhstan, the main problem was with those non-performing loans. And as you can see, until now, the GDP of the country was not restored to the level of 2013. Okay, so overall, the situation is not very good. Now, let me see what else I have here. I talked about China. Okay, here. And you can see here, they started the transition to the, do you see this line? It is thin. Do you see it, the chart?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so they started the transition to market economy in 1979. And as you can see, since then, there was no drastic fall as we had, okay? This is just for the for comparison purposes. Let me see what is. Here is the next illustration about inflation rate. We can see here that initially in 1992, the inflation rate was, it had three figures, 176, but this was already happening to the tenge, our own currency. But before that, even a stronger inflation on the order of 1,200% was in the ruble zone. Okay, so what you can see here is just the behavior of the tenge. The next illustration is about agriculture. All those sources are different. I found what I could on the internet. You see the initial fall from the 1992 value to 2000, it was huge. And in addition to all those problems that I already listed was withdrawal of government support for agriculture. It is very well known that in most countries, government provide a very strong support to their farmers. In Kazakhstan, not only the financial support was withdrawn, but also all kinds of technical, administrative help and help with pesticides, fertilizers, and so on. And then somebody in the government around 2000 came up with the idea that we need to restore all that system. And then from then, the agricultural production started to grow. And again, after that, sanctions imposed on Russia, we had a huge fall here. And today, the problem with agriculture is that what I would say, there are absolutely no ideas. They try to improve the situation with agriculture through public companies that are owned by government. And I think this is absolutely wrong because actually public companies suck out all profits from agriculture. And since there is no money left in agriculture, it cannot develop further. I can tell you one little example about the horse meat. Perhaps some people know that Kazakhs love horse meat, and we import horse meat from all countries like the United States, Canada, and so on. And the imports of horse meat are 10 times larger than we produce here. And this is terrible, I think. Now, the next point is about the life expectancy. Kazakhstan life expectancy between 1950 and 2021. Look at this. It was growing during the Soviet times, and then there was that Soviet Union collapse, and the life expectancy fell from 67 and something to 62. Okay, so here at the bottom there was a peak of suicides in Kazakhstan, and perhaps representatives of other Central Asian countries can say the same about their countries. So next, what is happening today? Today, I'm supposed to talk about that the Eurasian Union and its effect on Kazakhstan. I want to start with our internal problems. If we did not have those internal problems, the situation would have been much better. What are our internal problems? I say here that the problems of today are rooted in the past, okay? So what happens is that we in Kazakhstan are not happy with the actions of our government, because everywhere there is that tribal attitude, and tribal attitude is actually linked to high corruption in the government, because if a corrupt government official wants to steal money, that official surrounds himself or herself with people close to him or her. And those people happen to be either relatives or friends, including high school friends and so on. So that tribal thinking and high corruption everywhere, unfortunately, corruption is not limited to the government. It's spread to the whole economy. And this is our main problem today. It leads to all kinds of problems like lack of competence, inefficiency, and unprofessional decisions. I can give you a couple of examples. This is my next illustration. Something is not working. Okay, while it is loading, I can tell you what this is about. Is it loading? Perhaps I should close some of those windows that I opened before. So in 1996, the government opened a special offshore fund, and they started to send money to that offshore fund. The total amount that they sent to that fund was around $1 billion. And then they thought that the way this was done was not very good, because it was easily traceable. And in 2001, the Prime Minister of Kazakhstan told the public about that fund, and they decided to return all the money to Kazakhstan. But the scale of that operation itself tells us that how easily it was to send abroad such large amounts of money. And I'm not going to talk about what is happening today, because there are different rumors around that money to be sent abroad, different figures, but there are no confirmations. I tried to look for that information on the internet. There are no confirmations of that, of such transfers. But one clear case about of that corruption is in Astana. I'm going to, if it works again, the previous link did not work, okay? This is the article on Wikipedia about Expo 2017. It was an international exhibition in Astana, in the capital. At the time it was called Astana. Today it is called Nur-Sultan. And there are some figures here, how expensive it was. And the main problem is that right now it is not used efficiently. The building is huge, and the only important entity that is there is the International Financial Center. And we didn't hear much about the success or failure about that center, but I'm sure that if it was successful, we would know much more about it. And what happens is that most people in Kazakhstan think that this was just a waste of money. Another such case is the Astana LRT. Let me show first the good case. This is Han Chater Entertainment Center in Kazakhstan. Yes, so it is a big building, and it was a very nice addition to the capital of Kazakhstan. It looks like a tent. It is actually a tent, a huge tent, and there is an entertainment center, a mall, many other things in that center. And basically, it was a dream of the president of Kazakhstan, Nursultan Nazarbayev, who wanted to have in Astana something for people to go to in cold winters. Okay, so this is an example of money that was well spent. Let me see if I can open another one. This is the opposite example. Okay, in Astana, they came up with the idea that they need light rail transport from the city to airport. The distance was not very big and the traffic was not very large, but still they decided to go ahead with it. I'm going to show you what was left of that project. Those pictures that you may see here, it was the original idea, but actually that idea was not realized. This is what we have here. Okay, those ugly concrete structures spread in Astana, starting from Astana, from the capital to the airport. This is a clear example of embezzlement by the government. And what happened in this case, that the information about the project itself was published in the media. A couple of guys who participated in this, their names have been mentioned, but we are absolutely sure that since the total price, total cost of the project was over $1 billion, a couple of guys could not have done this. Okay, I mean the stealing the money. I'm talking about the theft. So and nobody was punished for this, executed or whatever. And huge projects like this continue to be implemented in Kazakhstan. In most cases, the project costs are exaggerated, like 2-3 times, and this is clearly has to do with corruption going on at the highest level. This is in Russian, okay, another illustration of that, of the light rail transport. And here, why I am showing this is because the current president himself, Tokayev, said that he does not believe that this LRT line will be feasible to finish, okay? Just because you can see here the figures that they estimated for that line to be profitable, the estimated traffic should be 146,000 people per day, while the actual traffic is just 2 people per day, okay? So just by looking at this, we can say that this project will never be profitable. The cost of the project was estimated at $1.6 billion. Most of that money already has been spent and nobody knows where the money went. To compare, I can show you the viaduct Millau in France. I have been there, I saw it personally. Here, okay? So this is a huge construction from, if you look at this picture, you cannot say that it's actually very big, but actually the height of the masts together with the supports here is over 300 meters. And actually the highest of them is higher than the Eiffel Tower, okay? So you can imagine how difficult it was to construct this bridge. And actually the consortium that was constructing this spent just $400 million, which is 4 times less than the cost of the Astana LRT project. Next, Kazakhstan is a landlocked country, but not only that, the climate in Kazakhstan is very harsh, okay? And actually, the capital of Kazakhstan by its temperature is second only to the capital of Ulaanbaatar. Only in Ulaanbaatar it is colder than in Astana. Now, why actually we can do all this despite all that theft going on and corruption? It's because we have a lot of natural resources, all kinds of resources. Obviously, first of all, oil and gas, but also chromium, iron ore, gold, copper. They say that the whole Mendeleev table is here, okay? And in most cases, we are in the first place or in the first 10 places in the whole world. Like if you take oil, for example, our place by the oil reserves in the world ranking is about 10th. If you take chromium, for example, then we are the second in the world. So here, this site that I opened here, this is about foreign direct investment. The main figure is this. Can you see this? I'm going to make it larger.
Видно вроде бы.
Okay, here, this figure. That by 2019, the total foreign direct investment stock stood at 150 billion in this counting from 1991, I believe. Okay, so the inflow was pretty big. It became a little smaller recently in the last couple of years, but I don't think it's a big problem because actually still large investors are interested in investing in Kazakhstan, and most of that investment comes to the extraction industry. This is another illustration regarding our resources, the mining industry in Kazakhstan. There are some more figures about what we have. See this figure, for example. Out of 110 elements in the Mendeleev table, 99 have been discovered, 70 explored, 60 are being extracted and used in Kazakhstan. If you ask a question where all of that is going, oil and gas go to Europe, the largest amounts of it go to Europe, while metals go to mostly to two countries, it's China and Russia. Both China and Russia are our largest trading partners. This is about, the next illustration is about low investment in infrastructure and environmental protection. There is a city called Temirtau in the east of the country, and there is a lot of iron ore, and there is a huge production complex in that city. So the Kazakh government sent that complex to a large international company called ArcelorMittal. Okay, the name comes. Mittal is an Indian businessman. We understand that in order to work in this area, you need access to international markets. You need a lot of experience in international markets in order to be able to sell. If you produce steel or iron products, and this is why that actually the government gave up. They said we cannot do it ourselves, and this is why they invited this company, ArcelorMittal. But what happens is that, at least this is our impression, that the company takes absolutely no care about that, the environment in the city. Often they have smog, and the level of pollution is very high, like 10 times, sometimes when it is bad, when the weather is bad, up to 20 times higher than the norm. So from that, I gave you a list of problems that we have, and I want to repeat the main thesis. The main thesis is that perhaps under better conditions, under better circumstances, the Eurasian Union could have been better for us, but because of our internal problems, the participation in the European Union is not so good. Now, many people know that the European Union, Eurasian Union, the treaty of that for the Eurasian Union was signed around 2015. Okay, and next I want to talk about the effects, what actually happened in Kazakhstan since then. So I have a little more about corruption. Let me skip that. And also human rights, everything is here. Oh, perhaps I should mention the National Fund of Kazakhstan. The money from the proceeds from the oil sector, most of that money was put into the National Fund of Kazakhstan. And at its peak, it had $77 billion in 2014, okay? And since then, it has been continually falling, and the figure today is $59 billion. And regarding the National Fund, I want to show you the main figures that are our concern today. Oh, it's not here. Maybe it's in my document itself. So what I wanted to say, it's in some of those Excel files, but right now I'm not sure I can find them. What I wanted to say is that since the large expenditures from the National Fund started even before this COVID virus thing started, okay? And after the COVID virus, approximately from May last year, the withdrawals from the National Fund often reached $1 billion per month. It's a huge figure. Okay, looks like I've been too critical about Kazakhstan. There is a lot of negative information. I want to skip that and go directly to the, here. I want to tell you something positive. Do you see this table?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so what is good about this? I told you the figure of the total foreign direct investment until now, it was $150 billion. And what happens is that, how does that money come to Kazakhstan and how the country repay that debt? Most of that debt is intra-company, that is an international company invests here, and then that investment should be repaid sometime later, and it is repaid from the income from that mineral resources extraction, okay? So the total figure looks very bad, like $160 billion, and it is comparable to the GDP of the country, which is around $170 billion. It's close to 90% of our total GDP. So the total figure of external debt is pretty high. But look at what I showed here with red, that direct investment, which is intercompany lending, is more comprises most of that. It is $100 billion. So the other parts of the debt, like general government, central bank, private banks, commercial banks, and other sectors, in relative terms, they are not so bad. Now, regarding Russia today, people from outside don't see the real situation in Russia. Of course, everybody knows about that land grab in Crimea, and then the problem with Ukraine and so on. And one of the US senators talked negatively about Russia and said that it is just a gas station. And for I would argue with that senator. Russia is more than just a gas station. And I have a document, and I want to show you that document that I downloaded from the site of the Central Bank of Kazakhstan. I mean, Russia, site of the Central Bank of Russia. Here. This is a very important document. Why it is important? If you compare the information coming from the Central Bank of Russia with the information that is available for Kazakhstan, for Russia, it is much clearer, more detailed. The exposition is much better, and so on. So I saw here many good figures, and one of those figures is very impressive. The figure is about the interest rates on loans. Interest rates on loans are a very important determinant of the business environment. In Kazakhstan, interest rates on loans for businesses are 15% and higher. For most companies, the interest rates exceed even 20%. I believe 15% is accessible only to companies that are somehow linked to the government. But in Russia, the interest rates on loans to businesses are close to what we have in the United States, for example. They start just at 6%. And this is very good for businesses because the lower the interest rate on loans, the easier for them to develop their businesses, okay? So this is the main figure that I saw here. And my impression is that there are also, I found also some information about organization of separate industries, for example, how they produce, how they deliver grain to international financial markets. They have ports on the Baltic Sea, and how this all is organized in order to for the benefit of the producers of grain. And the picture with grain producers in Kazakhstan is opposite. The impression is that if somebody specifically tries to reduce grain production in Kazakhstan, and the overall impression from this document and other documents that I saw is that so on the one hand, Russia is becoming stronger and stronger, and on the other hand, Kazakhstan is becoming weaker and weaker. And maybe initially it was not a very good idea for Kazakhstan to participate in that Eurasian Union, but now Kazakhstan absolutely doesn't have choice because of the weakening of the economy. It would not survive these days on its own. The economic links, the bilateral trade with Russia is very big, and in the last couple of years it became larger than with China. Okay, until some point the trade with Russia and China were equal, but today the trade with Russia is higher. And most importantly, we became dependent on the imports from Russia. Like if you go to a mall, you can see many goods imported from Russia, whereas the technology behind those goods is not very advanced, and we could have produced something like that ourselves. And this includes, for example, dairy products. Like in around 2005, I saw an owner of a Kazakhstani company which produced and exported dairy products to Russia. And these days, the situation is the opposite. Now, another good figure about Russia. Do we have time or not?
Yes, we still have some 10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay. Another good figure about Russia is that the balance of payments of Russia is positive, which means that the exports exceed imports for Russia. For us, it is negative, and it was positive for a long time, but starting from 2017 or 2018, it became negative, which means that the financial position of Kazakhstan is getting worse and worse. And I have a lot of information about the Eurasian Economic Union, how it performs, in particular here. This statement that Russia has heavily invested in its seaports on the Baltic Sea and wants to increase cargo traffic. And that cargo traffic is designed to improve exports of Russia to Western countries. Another point that already mentioned, Russia has become the largest exporter of grains, and we could have participated in that, but we don't, because actually Russia impedes our exports of grains. There are facts you can find on the internet that they try to increase tariffs on our grains imported to exported to international markets. So the conclusion is that this financial situation of Russia is much better than that of Kazakhstan. And I already mentioned the low interest rates. You can add to that large foreign exchange reserves, around $580 billion. And this is much better than for Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan has been losing its foreign exchange reserves. And even the devaluations of the Russian ruble did not affect that much the Russian economy. So in conclusion, this is what I want to say, that so far, as we can see from here, from Kazakhstan, the Eurasian Economic Union has been an instrument of the Russian protectionism, rather than a treaty for mutually beneficial cooperation. The domestic problems of Kazakhstan made the dependence of Kazakhstan on Russia stronger. The Russian penetration in the economy of Kazakhstan competes with that of China. Okay. Regarding China, we see here many Chinese investors which buy local businesses under false names. Okay. On the surface, you might think that the involvement of China in economy of Kazakhstan is not big, but actually we think it is big. In particular, in that house and that building, multi-story building where I lived, about 20 apartments belong to Chinese. For Kazakhstan leaving the Eurasian Economic Union, today it would be very difficult because the country is much weaker today than it was 5 years ago. That's it.
Thank you very much, Professor Manbayev. Now we have time for discussion. So please, those who would like to ask questions, if you, I hope majority of you know how to do that, but if you don't, there is a participants button, and if you press it, you will see at the bottom raise hand. So you can raise hand, and then you see it. I will see it immediately that you would like to ask a question. As I mentioned, if you wish, you also can type in either request for question or the question itself in the chat box, whatever. While you are thinking, if I may, I would like to ask my questions, one or two questions. First question is regarding the Eurasian Union. Well, it includes not only Russia and Kazakhstan, right? So it also has Belarus, Kyrgyzstan, and Armenia.
Right.
Do you see any effects of being member of the same union with these three countries?
Well, about Belarus, before that the treaty was signed, we saw many more goods from Belarus than today. We still see some of them today, but I don't know about the volume of the bilateral trade. While for Kyrgyzstan, we have actually a lot of goods from Kyrgyzstan, and I think it is good that cooperation, the economic cooperation with Kyrgyzstan is very good for Kyrgyzstan. Why? Because yeah, they can do, because of that cooperation, they can do something with their excess of labor. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. And yet another question, basically following your answer. You made the point that Kazakhstan is not fully on par with Russia, so it has some more issues than Russia. Well, I would say Russia has a lot of issues of its own, but that's not our today's topic. My point is that perhaps it is good to be member of the same union with country which is richer than yours. You can benefit more. Well, that's the point for Kyrgyzstan to be member of the union, to partner with Kazakhstan, Russia, have access to those rich markets, wealthy consumers, etc. Don't you think the same thing should be, similar consideration may apply also to Kazakhstan? It's good that Kazakhstan has, at least theoretically, access to Russian market. Does it really use this access?
Yeah,
what is your
I understand the question. Yes, under different circumstances, it would be simply wonderful, because the Russian market and the country itself is much larger than Kazakhstan. But what happens is that we here in Kazakhstan don't have any industrial policy. Okay, that's the main problem. Again, it's our internal problem. It's not the problem of the Eurasian Union.
Okay. Well, thank you. Actually, I tend to very much agree with what you say, that many issues which our country, because in Kyrgyzstan we also have complex system kind of reflection on our membership on the Eurasian Union, and not everybody is happy with this experience. But I agree that the main point is that it is the issues are inside the country rather than the membership in the union itself. Well, of course, we are more exposed now to Russia, to Kazakhstan. For Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan is a very big partner. But, well, I think that's an important lesson. I know we have some listeners today from Tajikistan, from possibly from Uzbekistan. I think that's one of the important lessons for them while they are considering membership in the union. It might have its positive sides, negative sides in narrow sense, but without comprehensive domestic reform, probably that's all will be of secondary importance, and maybe kind of changing some numbers after the common, not before the common, so to say. So, gentlemen, ladies, any other questions you have to Professor Menbaev? So there is one question from Said Farhad Shakil. Let me read it. Professor, what is Kazakhstan's stance on the maltreatment of Uyghur community in China? Why isn't it taking strong action against China? Your thoughts?
Kazakhstan's territory is large, but our population and economy are small. So in comparison with Russia and China, we are just a small country. And I believe a lot of a lot is going on under the hood. Like if you look at the relationship with China, it's a huge country, and we ordinary people simply don't know much about what is going at the government level. So we can do nothing against China, or like with those problems of Muslims in the Xinjiang area. We can do nothing about that. On the economic level too.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, there is one more gentleman. Azat Aituar would like to ask a question. The floor is yours. Yes.
Thank you, Professor Mambayev. My name is Azat Aituar. I work in Nazarbayev University. So my question would be, what can we do to profit from Eurasian Economic Union, in your mind? I mean, we're always gonna get some losses because they have an economy of scale, right? They're a bigger country, so their producers are producing for more of the consumers, so they have advantage as of like less expenses, marketing and other expenses, so their products is cheaper, right? Because they're producing for bigger market, so they are always going to win. But what do you think we can do to benefit from it, right? And then I also want to argue with you because we have diversification strategy, GPIR, maybe you know. What was it, the name? So it's diversification policy, something like this, where we have we help our manufacturers and agriculture, manufacturing and agriculture business, right? So what is your could you please advise us, what do you think, what can we do to benefit from Eurasian Economic Union, because we are really close to the one of the big markets and we don't have any tariffs with them, so this is an advantage. How can we use it? How can we improve the situation, in your opinion?
Okay, thank you. This is a big topic and we can talk for hours on that, and we will not come to a common opinion, because in this area there are so many different opinions, as many as there are people. I just want to mention one example, that this is example about free market economy, liberal approach versus government intervention approach. There is a paper, I couldn't find the, today I was trying, I couldn't find that paper, but in general I can find if you are interested in that. This is an example of the Japanese experience. What happened was that until about 1930 in Japan, they pursued a liberal economic policy, and what for example, large American auto producers put up their plants, like they produced cars in Japan, but starting from 1930, the Japanese government started to pursue an imperialist policy. They wanted to become independent and they wanted to set up their own production. And basically, sometimes you have to go against the flow, and that was what the government regulation was about. If you go with the flow, then you have to allow all that big companies, and then you have nothing about that international competition. You can do nothing about that because obviously they have larger experience, better technologies, lower costs, and so on. But if you can direct the financial flows to those purposes that help you improve your own economy. Okay, that's the general answer. That, like, if you take Toyota, for example, Toyota started as a trading company, and it was nothing except that. But under the Japanese imperialist government, it started to grow and it started to produce cars. And what happened was that after the World War II, that article that I don't remember the name now, and I can send to you if you want to see it. That article says that most key people in economy in the Central Bank of Japan were preserved their positions after World War II, and they the policy of supporting national companies was preserved after World War II, and this is why Japan grew so quickly after the war.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other people, any other questions, please? Well, if not, well, let me then. Yes, there is one more question. Would you like to ask it to yourself? Разия Рубанова, вы хотите сами спросить, да, пожалуйста? Госпожа Армонова, пожалуйста.
Добрый день. Это не Разия Урмонов, просто у меня компьютер настроен на другого человека. Фактически участвую я, Азамат Умурзаков, Кыргызстан. По поводу грузоперевозок, когда вот проводятся грузоперевозки нашей продукции с Кыргызстана там, в Россию, большая часть границ проходит через Казахстан. Соответственно, Казахстан закрывает границы и не пропускает наши грузы в Россию. И, соответственно, товар, продукция портится. Из-за чего это может быть? Может, какие-то политические взгляды?
Это
может...
прямое нарушение положения Евразийского союза. Если вы зайдете, там само положение о Евразийском союзе говорит, что все страны должны иметь равный доступ к рынкам друг друга. И там есть даже что-то вроде суда. Этот суд, я посмотрел решение этого суда, этот суд рассматривает в основном внутренние дела России. Там какой-то спор между двумя компаниями российскими или между российской компанией и российским правительством. Этот спор решается, а международных споров, скажем, между Казахстаном и Россией или, скажем, там Кыргызстаном, Россией, такие вопросы совершенно не решаются. Более того, я посмотрел состав этого суда. Там два казаха сидят, и они ничего не делают, чтобы защитить Казахстан.
Нет, в данном случае не Казахстан, а вот продукцию Кыргызстана. То, что...
Кыргызстан тоже, там есть представитель Кыргызии, там есть представитель Белоруссии и прочие. Они все сидят просто как, ну я не знаю, место занимают.
Получается, ненужный суд, ненужные эти люди получают, так сказать.
Да, совершенно верно. И всюду Россия проталкивает свои интересы.
Ну да, потому что если учитывать то, что там все товары, грузы везут в Россию, там тысячные пробки становятся возле границ Казахстана.
Да, совершенно
Соответственно, уже потребители, компания, которая заказала ту или иную продукцию, там овощи, фрукты или там другую продукцию, она уже, соответственно, уже выставляет штрафные санкции в отношении крымских производителей, да?
Да, это просто ужасно, и ничего не меняется в этой области.
А причины, почему казахстанские границы не пропускают?
Ну, у нас тоже, я же говорил, у нас тоже коррупция навалом. И вот у нас особенность казахстанской коррупции какая? Что если бы она была сосредоточена просто наверху, это было бы еще туда-сюда, это терпимо было бы. Но она всюду, и нельзя сказать, что хотя там Назарбаев, вся власть у него в руках вроде бы, на самом деле нельзя сказать, что он всем управляет. И те люди, которые там сидят в таможне на нашей с вами границе, они сами все это решают. Вот в чем проблема.
Большая часть, когда мы спрашиваем, почему, что и как, они говорят, просто был словесный указ или словесная рекомендация не пропускать, и все.
Да. Это все делается с одной целью, чтобы там какие-то взятки взять.
Понятно. Все, хорошо, спасибо.
Спасибо. Just as a matter of fact, let me provide one example when this court which you mentioned was instrumental for Kyrgyzstan. So there was a when Kyrgyzstan joined the Eurasian Union, we would like to benefit from lower internal railway tariffs. And part of Kyrgyzstan is connected by railway with Kazakhstan and then with Russia through territory of Uzbekistan. And Kazakh Railway claimed that that's already not intra-union shipment, so should not apply the internal tariff, should apply external, which is like 20-30% higher. And our guys took this to the court, and to the benefit of Kyrgyzstan, the court decided that yes, it's still intra. If the train goes without stops in Uzbekistan, just crosses its territory, it's still intra union shipment. So we saved a little bit of money on these railway shipments. Well, that's the only example I know relevant for my country, for Kyrgyzstan, which was kind of useful. But in general, I agree that this mechanism is still has much room to improve, let's say this way. Any other questions, reflections? Yes, there is another question from Robert Brudzinski. Can we expect that more trade within the Eurasian Union will facilitate diversification of the Kazakh economy? Or on the contrary, it should rather strengthen Kazakhstan's specialization in few areas? So would you expect more specialization or more diversification?
I think specialization is inevitable. Like we have some good conditions to produce in the extraction industry, in agriculture, we have some good conditions. For example, the grains that grow in Kazakhstan do not grow in Ukraine or Russia. And I think we should go along specialization.
Yeah, well, the question is not only what we want to do, but what we can do also.
Absolutely, yes.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? Again, either type it in the chat or raise your hand. Oh, I don't see anything, frankly speaking. So if so, I think we had very interesting presentation and rich discussion after the presentation. So on behalf of all the participants, let me thank Professor Minbayev for his excellent presentation and valuable thoughts he shared with us. And we hope to have other opportunities to participate in this kind of discussion. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Thank you to all the participants. Спасибо большое всем участникам. На этом завершаем.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.